How's it going, everybody? Daner here with North Central Coins, and welcome back to another episode of the most rare and valuable coins in Australia. Today I'm going to be counting down the top 25 most valuable Australian coins that you can find, whether it's in your pocket change, you get a collection handed down to you, or maybe you are coin roll hunting. So before I start this video off, I would really appreciate if you guys would hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and also hit that bell notification so you can see my new videos as they are being released. In the past, I've made several videos detailing the rare and valuable coins from several countries, including America, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, China, and I'm going to be making plenty more in the future. So make sure to hit that bell notification so you can stay tuned as my new videos are being released. I'm also releasing new coin roll hunting videos as well on a weekly basis, so make sure to stay tuned as those are coming out. But what do you guys say we get into today's video and I break down the top 25 most valuable Australian coins? Let's get it, guys. So as I start this list off, I'm not going to go in any particular order because all of the coins we are covering on this list are extremely rare and can be worth buku amounts of money. Also, I want to note that the currency that I'm going to be giving you the values for these coins in is Australian dollars. I will put the exchange rate for Australian to American up on the screen for you right now. Another important note, for some of these early Australian coins, there can be different mint marks. If it has an I mint mark, it indicates that it was struck at the Calcutta Mint in India. If it has an M mint mark, it means it was struck at the Melbourne Mint at Australia. And if it has an H mint mark, it means it was struck at the Heaton Mint in Birmingham, England. So what do you say we start this list off with the 1930 Australian penny? Now, the variety you are looking for is the Indian mint penny, so it will have an I mint mark indicating it was struck at the Calcutta Mint. Very few of these were made and even less of them survived, especially in a high grade state. If you can find one of these and it actually scores in the high MS region, it can be worth up to $400,000. So pushing $500,000 for what is essentially a coin that was worth 1 cent back in the day. So that ain't too bad if you ask me. Next up on this list is the 1923 Australian halfpenny. Now, I have actually made a full video on this halfpenny in the past. If you guys would like to go check that out, I will leave a link for it in the top corner of this video. But it is one of the rarest Australian halfpennies in existence. You don't need to look for any mint marks or anything particular. You just need to find one of these dates. And if you can find one of these and it scores in the high MS range, it can be worth up to $72,000. Next up is the 1916 Australian halfpenny. This will have an I mint mark indicating it was struck at the Calcutta Mint, and it is actually an era or variety that you are looking for. Now, for the 1916, you can find a variety where it is muled with an Indian quarter anna. Now, if you can identify this variety, it can be an extremely valuable coin worth up to $100,000 if it is in the high MS range. Now, not many of these exist, very few high-grade examples exist, so your chances of identifying one of these varieties is slim to nil, but you should always keep your eyes open, and if you get a collection handed down to you, you should always skim through because you never know what you have lying around. Number 22 is the 1931 Australian halfpenny. You don't need to look for any mint marks, errors, or varieties. You just simply need to find a 1931. If you can find one and it can score up in the high grade, high MS state range, you can be worth up to $3,000 for the 1931 Australian halfpenny. Number 5 is the 1927 Proof Canberra Florin. Now, there is a non-proof issue of this coin as well, and it is not nearly as valuable or rare. If you can find one of these 1927 Proof Canberra Florins, it can actually be worth $39,000 if it scores high up in the PF range, which is the designation that proof coins get. Now, this is a commemorative coin that was issued in proof sets. It is very limited, the amount of these that were actually struck, which is why it is so valuable. Very few of them exist and even less of them in a high grade state. Number 19 is the 1937 Australian Proof Crown. Now, there are different designations that coins can get depending on how it was made. If it is a business strike, it will get an MS. If it is a proof coin, meaning it was issued in a proof set, it will get a PF or a PL designation, and specimen coins will get an SP. Now, proof coins usually for modern coins are not worth as much, but for some of the older sets, especially when it comes to some of these foreign coins, they can be worth a whole lot of money, and this list definitely goes to show that, because the 1937 proof crown coin, so that will have come out of the 1937 Australian proof set, can be worth up to $35,000 if it can get in the high PF or PL range. Number 18 is the 1915 H mint mark proof florin. So the 1915 H will have an H mint mark indicating it was struck at the Heaton Mint in Birmingham, England, and it is also the proof strike you are looking for, meaning it came out of a 1915 proof set. Now, if you can find one of these florins and it scores in the high MS range, it can be worth up to $115,000. So that is a coin that is now worth over 6 figures. Next up is the 1920 Australian halfpenny. Another extremely rare halfpenny with a very limited mintage. Very few of these were produced, which leads to an extremely rare coin, especially if you have a high MS or high graded example. It can be worth up to $1,300 if it is in the high MS range, and that is for the 1920 Australian halfpenny. Next up is the 1920 penny with no dot. Now for the 1920 pennies, there are a few different varieties you can look for. The Indian variety will have 178 beads, and the N of the OMN will point to identical. On the English variety, which is actually the rare one that you are looking for, the English obverse will have 177 beads, and the N of the OMN will point between the two denticles. Now, the English obverse dot above lower scroll variety is by far the most valuable variety to look for, but even if you find one of these 1920 pennies and it doesn't have the English or Indian obverses, if it has a no dot, which is a relatively high mintage for a coin, especially for an older date like that, the 1920 no dot Australian penny has a mintage of 9,041,000, but it is still worth some good money in a high grade state. If you can find the 1920 no dot penny and it scores high in the MS range around MS 65, it can be worth up to $39,000. Next up on this list is the 1932 Australian florin coin. Now this is not a proof or any error or varieties that you need to look for. It is just simply the 1932 florin. A lot of these you can actually scope out on scrap silver purchases from eBay or maybe your local coin shop. I'm sure they have probably done some digging and sifting to get all of the key dates out of there, but you never know what you can find. It never hurts to ask what they have lying around, and if you can score one of these key dates, even if it's not in the MS range, it'll still definitely be worth some good money. But the 1932 florin can be worth up to $20,000 if it scores in the high MS range. Next up is the 1924 Australian halfpenny. You don't need to look for any mint marks or any errors or varieties. You just simply need to find an Australian halfpenny with the date 1924. If you can find one of these and it scores high up in the MS range, around MS 65, it can be worth up to $6,500. Next up is the 1948 penny with the Y variety. Now basically, to identify this, you are looking for a little dot on the bottom right hand side of the Y in penny. If you can find one of these 1948 Y dot pennies, it can be worth up to $3,000 for a high grade example. Next up on this list is going to be probably one of the most infamous and valuable Australian coins of all time. If you are an Australian coin collector, then this one has definitely been on your radar at some point, and I have actually heard about this a couple of times even before I did the research for this video, and that is the 1813 Holy Dollar. So a little bit of information. In the year 1813, the economy of the colony of New South Wales was plagued by a lack of currency during its early years. The governor, Lachlan Macquarie, attempted to remedy this by importing 40,000 silver Spanish 8 real pieces. By having the centers of the coins stamped out, Macquarie distinguished them as belonging to the colony of New South Wales and prevented them from going straight out again. In doing so, he created the first currency minted in Australia. Now, these things are extremely rare. Very few examples survived, especially in actual reasonable condition. They haven't been through the meat grinder. To find one of these that still has detail, luster, and any of the relief left on it is going to be a pretty big challenge for any coin collector out there, whether your level of experience. But the 1813 Holy Dollar is definitely one of those holy grail coins that flies under the radar a little bit. Everyone has heard of the 1943 copper penny, and the 1944 steel cent. But when it comes to Holy Grail $1,000,000 coins, this is definitely one that you probably have a better chance of finding, especially if you live out in the Oceania region. Whether it is Australia, New Zealand, or maybe even England, somebody came back from Australia, these things could still be lying around in your attic or maybe be some antique shop out there. But when it comes to value, it is definitely one of the most valuable Australian coins of all time. Even one of these beat up and rough shape and gone through the meat grinder can be worth around $20,000. And this coin can be worth up to $1 million if it scores in the MS range. Number 12 is going to be the 1917 Melbourne Mint 6p Australian coin. Now this is the only 6p coin to make it onto this list. Unfortunately, I thought I would mix it up a bit and see if I could find some strange denominations to throw in there. And of course, Australia made a 6p. So for the year 1917, you are looking for an M Mint mark, indicating that it was struck at the Melbourne Mint in Australia. Now this is by far one of the rarest and most valuable of the Australian 6p coin series. It can be worth up to $27,500 if it scores in the high MS range. Number 11 is the 1915 Australian florin. You don't need to look for any mint marks, errors, or varieties. You just simply need to find an Australian florin with the date 1915, and this coin can be worth up to $32,000 if it scores in the MS range. Well, we have made it to number 10 on this list, and the coin that is featured at number 10 is actually going to be the only 3p coin that made it onto today's list. I have actually included this in a video I made in the past. I've made a few videos detailing some of the other rare and valuable Australian coins you can find. I definitely suggest you go check those out. But this is the 1922 2/1 3p. So basically, to identify this, what you want to do is look at the last two in the date 1922, and if it looks like basically the 2 was stamped over a 1, which is basically what happened, I believe. Either there is a die error or they forgot to change over the dies from the previous year when they started producing the 1922 3p coins. It allowed some of these extremely valuable errors to get out there. If you can find one of these 1922 2/1 3p coins, it can be worth up to $12,000 for an MS example. Next up is the 1915 H Mint Mark Australian halfpenny. So you are looking for the 1915 date with an H Mint mark, indicating it was struck at the Heaton Mint in Birmingham, England, and the halfpenny denomination. If you can identify all of these, this coin can be worth up to $11,500 in the MS range. And then going back a year earlier, next up on the list is the 1914 Heaton Mint halfpenny. So it would seem this is a pretty valuable date range, 1914-15 for a lot of these Australian coins. And for the 1914 halfpenny, you are also looking for an H Mint mark, indicating it was struck at the Heaton Mint in Birmingham. This one isn't quite as valuable as the 1915, but it is still worth a pretty penny, or halfpenny I should say, because it can be worth up to $3,500 for an MS example. Number 7 is the 1918 Indian Mint halfpenny. So this will have an I Mint mark, indicating it was struck at the Calcutta Mint. In India, you're looking for the date 1918 and a halfpenny denomination. If you can identify all of these factors, then you can have a halfpenny that is worth up to $9,500 in the high MS range. So almost $10,000 for that halfpenny. Number 6 is the 1914 halfpenny, and this is without the H Mint mark. It's not quite as valuable as the Heaton Mint variety, but basically if you can find a 1914 halfpenny and it has the date 1914, the denomination of halfpenny, and no mint marks, it can be worth up to $3,000 for a high grade example. Number 5 is the 1945 Y dot halfpenny. So just like the 1948 penny that we discussed earlier on this list, the 1945 Y dot halfpenny, to identify it, basically you need to look for a little dot on the bottom right hand side of the Y at the end of penny. If you can find that, the denomination of halfpenny, and the date 1945, it can be worth up to $700 for a high grade example. So not super valuable, but this is one that might still be floating around and you might actually still have a chance to find out there, even if you're just starting out your coin collecting journey. Some of these could be some good varieties to look for if they aren't worth the insane amounts of money. Number 4 is the 1914 Heaton Mint Proof Florin. So like some of the other coins we discussed earlier on in the list, there are different strikes for coins. If you can find the 1914 Heaton Mint proof set florin, so it will have come out of a proof set issued in the year 1914 by the Hedon Mint. This is an extremely valuable Australian coin that can be worth up to $175,000 for high-grade examples. So a lot of these early date proof coins are super valuable when it comes to the Australian. I'm sure most Australian collectors are already aware of the coins to look out for, and they probably know that a lot of these early proof coins are worth a lot of money. It seems to be a very similar case with a lot of the early Canadian specimens. Most of the Canadian specimen coins issued in sets up until the year 1970 can be worth crazy amounts of money, and it would seem like a lot of these Australian proof coins are just about in the same vein as those Canadian specimens. So definitely, if you're a collector of world coins or just looking to add something neat to your collection that you can make some money off of eventually, these Australian coins are definitely good to look out for. Number 3 is going to be the 1942 Australian halfpenny. You don't need to look for any varieties or mint marks. You just need to find a 1942 date with a denomination of halfpenny. And if you find one of these and it scores in the high MS range, it can be worth around $1,000. Number 2 on this list is the Australian 1925 penny. You don't need to find any mint marks, errors, or varieties, just simply the 1925 Australian penny. It is by far one of the rarest Australian pennies ever made. Very few of them were produced, and even less of them survive in a high-grade state, and because of that, it makes it a holy grail coin that can be worth up to $27,000 for a high-grade state for the 1925 Australian penny. This is one that you may still be able to find if you get a collection handed down to you. There may still be one floating out there in a coin roll. I don't know exactly how Australia's coinage system works. If you can still get rolls of coins at your bank, I would love to know. If you live in Australia and you are a coin collector, I would love to know how it works out there. So let me know down in the comments. But the 1925 penny, super valuable and rare, and you should always keep your eyes open. You never know what kind of goodies you can score when you buy lots on eBay. Sometimes you can purposely scout stuff out and people won't know what they have. Maybe they get a collection handed down to them and they don't exactly know the value of the coin, so they just post it onto an auction site or onto eBay, and you can cherry pick those out. Or maybe you make a purchase and they include some bonus coins thinking that these Australian pennies are worthless, and maybe, just maybe, you get a coin that could be worth thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So these are some good dates to look for. I really hope you guys enjoy these lists and find them helpful. If you do, please hit that thumbs up, please subscribe, and also hit that bell notification so you can see my new videos as they are being released. And then what do you say we get into number 1 on this list, which is going to be the 1917 over 18 over date penny. So basically, to identify this, you are looking at the last digit for the date, 1917, and if it looks like there is an 8 stamped over the 7, then you have an extremely rare and valuable error penny that can be worth up to $30,000 if it scores in the high MS region. This is very similar to the 1922 2 over 1 3 pence coin, but you are basically looking for an 8 stamped over the 7. And that is pretty much going to wrap up this list, guys. We have counted down the top 25 most valuable Australian coins. I'm going to be making plenty more lists like this in the future, so make sure to stay tuned for those. Make sure to watch my coin roll hunting videos as they are released weekly, and you can follow along with me and my channel. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Peace out and have a good one, y'all.